Everyone, and welcome to the Biotech Network's webinar sponsored by Aspen Biosciences. I'm Mary Kennedy. I am both the founder of Biotech Networks as well as the Director of Business Development at Aspen Biosciences. And we're really happy to have you here today. So today we'll hear from Aspen Biosciences CEO Mark Fortner, and we'll be talking about your roadmap for expanding drug discovery programs in 2023. So just to tell you a little bit about the Hopin platform, so we'd like you to introduce yourself in the chat on the right. There's actually 3 different chats, but you can choose to do so in any of the chats. You can use the event chat, the stage chat, and later on the session chats will open up. So keep an eye on the left menu and you'll be able to know what's live, and we'll also be guiding you through the chat. And also we have some how-tos in reception if you're having a hard time. So the schedule today is we're starting with the webinar presentation, which you'll learn more about it shortly. And then at 12:45, when the presentation is finished, you'll have the chance to enter networking sessions. So you'll be able to have a Q&A with Mark Fortner. There's also a drug discovery networking table. And so these are both similar to Zoom. And there will also be an expo. And then we really would like to hear from you. So we are giving away a $50 gift card, and we are choosing them randomly from the people who ask questions during the webinar. So that's here in the stage chat. So be sure to enter your questions here, and we'll ask Mark to address them after he's done speaking. So speaking of Mark, he's the CEO of Aspen Biosciences. I've known him for at least 10 years. He has 20 years experience in biopharma research informatics, and he really is a thought leader in agile user-driven methodologies for many areas, including genomics, proteomics, and cheminformatics. And so I won't read the client list out to you, but it's really quite impressive. So then we also have Tracy Murray here, who's marketing manager at Aspen Biosciences. And Tracy, would you like to speak a little bit? Tracy, you're on mute.
Oops. Hi, Mary. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. Please feel free to stop over at the expo after the webinar. There you'll be able to view a short video about Aspen Biosciences, and we've provided several links to additional resources that may be relevant to you as well. Of course, I'll be there too if you have any additional questions you may have about Aspen Biosciences. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And without further ado, we'll turn off our cameras and hear from Mark. Thank you.
Well, thanks, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on creating roadmaps for expanding drug discovery programs. Over the past few years, we've been engaged in a number of different projects, helping companies scale the work that they have to do. And what you'll be learning about in this webinar is some of the lessons that we've learned over those years, and to give you a better idea of what roadmaps are all about. So our agenda for today is to provide you with an overview of roadmaps and what they can do for your business. We'll also explore how they can help you understand your business better and help you frame the goals that you have for that business and plot a path towards them from your current location. So what is a roadmap? A roadmap is a number of different things. It's a destination, basically a measurable set of goals that you want to achieve in a given time frame. It also consists of a current location, so a clear understanding of your current business. And then there's also a pathway between those 2 points. And that pathway is usually described in terms of the people, the process, and technologies required to get you from point A to point B. In addition, that pathway also describes things like the metrics for success, the improvements that need to be made, and also the budgets required to achieve that. So one of the things that we want to really focus on is how different companies grow over time. And every company in the drug discovery industry reaches a certain set of inflection points during the course of its evolution. So for a number of companies that are at the pre-Series A level, you might have 2 programs that are currently making their way through the preclinical stage and maybe into early phase 1. As you begin to grow through collaborations with third parties, then the numbers of programs also continue to grow as well. When you go through a Series A fundraise and Series B, the numbers of programs in your pipeline begin to jump. And all of these changes, all of these inflection points can be, are definitely growth opportunities, but they also present a number of challenges. So what factors drive the growth of the drug discovery company, and what opportunities and challenges drive the numbers that we see here? Let's take a look at a few examples. So in terms of opportunities, we have a variety of innovative new modalities that we're just now beginning to see make their way into the clinic. I think probably everybody is familiar with RNA vaccines at this point, and antibodies as well. We're also beginning to see antibody drug conjugates make their way through the approval process. We're also seeing a number of companies pioneering cell and gene-based therapeutics. And then in addition to that, we're seeing numbers of targeted protein degraders increase in the pipelines that we see out there. So these types of degraders are everything from PROTACs, which are compounds that can address 2 targets, basically an E3 ligase target and a target of interest. And then we also see protabs, which are antibody forms of the same type of approach. And then we also see peptide-based versions of the same thing. In addition to that, we're seeing new technologies come about, such as DNA-encoded libraries. These are gaining a lot of traction in the industry, and they're making it possible for small molecule companies to rapidly generate new compounds. In addition to that, we're continuing to see innovations being made in the automated chemistry space, allowing companies to rapidly generate compounds in an automated fashion. And then we're also seeing artificial intelligence being applied to the drug discovery process in a number of different places in that process. Everything from analyzing SAR data and making suggestions about new changes that could be made to the structures of compounds. We're also seeing artificial intelligence and text binding being applied to identifying new targets. There's also limitless outsourcing potential that we didn't really see 20 years ago when I was getting started. We're seeing more and more highly specialized CROs, or CROs with large umbrella organizations that have a lot of capabilities built into them. And these capabilities range in everything from DNA encoded libraries and artificial intelligence to other tools as well. But basically what these CROs allow the small molecule discovery organization, or any drug discovery organization, to do is to be able to scale more effectively to meet the needs that they're trying to achieve. We're also seeing changes in funding models and the ways in which drug discovery companies achieve the growth that they're after. So some of those models include spin-out licensing, where a company will basically spin out a new company for one particular therapeutic, for example. And we've seen others that will in-license a compound, push it through its clinical trials, and then sell the company or sell some piece of the company and use that to fund the next generation of drugs. In terms of drug discovery challenges, we continue to be faced by the costs involved in getting a new drug from the bench to the bedside. In 2013, the latest estimates that we have from the Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Discovery or Drug Development is about $2.6 billion to get a drug from the bench to the bedside. And that approval process is obviously extremely expensive and time-consuming to go through. The other complexities that are involved in drug discovery include everything from complex biology, a very dynamic business environment. The science is constantly changing, the tools are constantly changing, and every company has a unique combination of tools, processes, and modalities that they're working on. And all of those variables taken together create challenges for each company. In addition to that, starting in 2020, we started to see COVID-19 beginning to affect the supply chain for drug discovery companies. We had heard from some of our customers that they had challenges in getting everything from reagents to 96-well plates, simply because of the timing involved with this. There's also a changing regulatory environment as well that may impact us going forward, but that's yet to be determined. That changing regulatory environment, though, can affect the way investors perceive drug discovery companies. And so this can present a challenge if you're going out and looking for investment. So let's talk for a minute about getting the right perspective when it comes to looking at your business. If we think for a moment in terms of Google Maps, Google Maps has all these different layers associated with it. So there's a street view, a satellite view, a terrain view, and a traffic view, and other types of views from biking trails and so forth. So all of these layers of information provide you with the information that's needed in order to make your journey from point A to point B. So if we take that basic analogy, then what would the roadmap look like towards an IND? What are the layers of that map? So here is a typical drug discovery process, everything from target identification through the preclinical stages. The layers in our map cover everything from laboratory processes, including target identification assays, target validation assays, screening assays, SAR screening, and then IND enabling studies at the preclinical level. So this is, again, kind of a high-level view of the drug discovery process, but each layer begins to add additional information. So here, for example, there are different informatics tools that come into play to help support those processes. So everything from target and literature databases to registration and inventory, project management software, and LIMS or ELN software. In addition to that, you have R&D staffing playing a role in progressing these projects through your pipeline. So it's not only your internal biology and chemistry folks, but it's also outsourcing. You might have FTE resources that you're using from various CROs that are helping solve certain problems in your drug discovery pipeline. In addition to that, budget plays a key role in establishing what is possible for a company to do within a certain time frame. And then lastly, one of the things that affects the process as well is the roles that your partners play in advancing your programs through the drug discovery process. So those partners can help define timelines for you that drive a lot of the projects in your pipeline. So one of the first things you have to do if you're planning a road trip for the summer, or you're planning your path towards an IND, is to start with the destination in mind. You want to start at a high level. You want to keep in mind that the steps to get there may be iterative in nature. You want to think of it in terms of continuous improvement as opposed to a quantum leap getting you from point A to point B without any stops in between. That rarely, if ever, happens, and it's much more difficult on your R&D staff if they have to deal with rapid changes like that. It's much easier for them to absorb those changes in a continuous fashion over time. You also want to be able to work backwards from your goal to your current state. Some of the goals that you come up with, you want to always think of them in terms of quantifiable results. So a couple of examples are you want to increase the number of programs from 3 to 7. A better way of stating that goal as well would be you want to increase the number of INDs from to 5, for example, over the next 3 years. And that way you set some sort of a time box that you want to try to achieve those goals within. One thing that can help clarify your goals and the metrics for success towards that is to use a TPP. It's a targeted product profile. Many of you are familiar with them already, but it's a way of being able to define what that end product will look like. What will that drug look like? What features does it need to have in order to make a difference in the patient communities that you're trying to serve? So for a moment, let's take a look at an example. Here we're taking a company called Basecamp Therapeutics. It's a composite of some of the companies that we've dealt with in the past, and we're just borrowing numbers and information to create a sort of composite example for you. This particular company has about 150 employees. It has about 250 million in funding. They've done Series A and Series B fundraisers. The therapeutic classes they're working in, they've got monovalent inhibitors and targeted protein degraders. And then the therapeutic areas that they're working in are primarily oncology and pain. So if we start with the end in mind, the destination is basically to get a total of 15 programs in place. And these programs are in these particular phases. This is that final destination that they want to try to achieve. They also, in addition to these 15 programs, they also want 2 collaborations to help drive some of these programs. From their current location, here we can see that they have 4 programs in total, ranging from a preclinical program to a target validation program that they currently have in their pipeline. And so their challenge is to get from their current location to the destination. To help understand what that current location is like, you need to perform a situational analysis, basically defining where you are on this map. By definition, your drug discovery programs are unique. In order to do this situational analysis, we have to leverage your experience with your therapeutic indications, the drug targets that you're working on, the modalities. We look at competitive information as well, and look at things like your success rate estimations. We pull this information together to help build a better model for what your business looks like. We also use numbers concerning the numbers of candidates in your pipeline in order to help define where you want to be able to go and what kind of scaling is involved in order to get there. So to help us with this kind of analysis, we make use of Farm to Market, which is a database. It's a business intelligence platform for biotech companies. And it provides us with access to the pipelines of over 800 different companies here in the United States. And this gives us a better idea of what the competitive landscape looks like for drug discovery companies. So one of the other key things that affects that model that we're trying to build is the efficiency of design, make, and test cycles. So if we take an example of compound synthesis, you might start out by designing 150 compounds. And you might dock those compounds against your target protein. Of those, you might select maybe 100 compounds that are high priority that you want to be synthesized. And of those, as you put them through a variety of different assays, you may select 50 compounds that show a combination of favorable activity and PK/PD profiles. So that information taken together gives you a decent idea of where you're going with your compounds, and may suggest additional changes, structural changes that you can make to those compounds in another round, because this is a very iterative design, make, test cycle. So we mentioned earlier the path between our current location and the final destination that we're shooting for. If we take a look just at pure numbers and we look at, going from a Series A to a collaboration, for example, just looking at these numbers at face value, it would tell us that we need to scale by 3 times in order to achieve that goal. So if we took a very sort of naive view of that, we could say, oh, I need to scale up my staffing by 3, or I need to scale up the number of reagents and the number of assays that I'm running by a factor of 3. But that's not exactly true. There are a lot of factors that will affect how you scale this. There are questions that you'll ask yourself as you go through this. Is there a high degree of homology between the targets that we're putting into these programs? Is there a high degree of homology with the targets themselves or specific binding sites for those targets? How can you apply the lessons learned from one program to another? So if I have 2 targets with a high degree of homology between them, are there lessons learned from the first program that I can apply to the second program? Are there any patterns to the attrition rate that I'm seeing from one project to another? Are there any chemical building blocks that we're using in our synthetic routes that are actually lowering the efficiency of these reactions? What are parts of the process that are extremely time consuming, those tent poles, if you will, in our process that are slowing us down? And then the other thing that we ask ourselves is, what is the effect of outsourcing on that productivity and scalability? So you might be outsourcing parts of your synthesis operations to a company like Pharmaron, for example. How does that affect the work that you do? How does that affect your efficiencies internally with doing that? So here's kind of the scary part, I guess, or sometimes scary part, is the process of auditing your processes and technologies. So let's take a look at some of the things that we want to learn whenever we're looking at how we do drug discovery. So number one, we take a look at the processes that you use to do drug discovery. Everybody does drug discovery differently, whether it's small molecule based, antibody based, or some other more exotic therapeutic class. What are the costs involved in this process? How long does it take? How many people are required? What are the factors that affect the efficiency of the process? All of those types of key performance indicators are crucial to helping us understand what will affect the scalability of the company. In terms of the infrastructure needed to support those processes, you're going to look at what tools do we use for protein production and chemical synthesis. What tools do we use for managing laboratory assay data, managing the inventory of reagents and compounds that we're running through our system. We also look at the instrumentation involved throughout this process. Is there a LIMS or an ELN implementation that's required to help us take the company to the next level? And are there any other informatics tools that can help accelerate this process? So all of these types of questions help us better understand the business that we're trying to grow. One tip for this is you might take a look at our white paper entitled Lessons Learned from ELN and LIMS Implementations. And this can give you a better idea of some of the considerations that are involved in making those types of selections. You'll be able to get that information at our expo after the end of this webinar. So let's get back to the roadmap analysis for Basecamp Therapeutics. So here, Basecamp has designed they've got a current set of programs in place for a total of 4 programs in their pipeline, and our goal is to get to 15. And here we can see the numbers of projects at each of the stages. Below that, we can see the key processes and tools that are going to be affected by needing to scale. Here we can see that there are some known bottlenecks the company was aware of prior to starting. But during the course of doing the roadmap analysis, they realized that there was also a need for being able to manage protein design requests, to being able to more effectively design target proteins, and then also to manage the clone order process. Underlying all of this is this need to manage requests and to manage notifications. Too often, companies rely on email to keep track of what's happening within their drug discovery operations. And that can cause problems when somebody goes on vacation, for example, or when a threaded conversation is basically buried in somebody's email. In addition to that, we identified the need to be able to create protein complexes. They needed better tools for being able to do that. And then also better tools for being able to manage library and compound synthesis. So this gives you an idea of sort of the key stumbling blocks that needed to be overcome in order to be able to achieve their goals. So staffing considerations are obviously really important in order to be able to achieve the type of scale that companies want to be able to achieve. One of the things we talked about earlier was this need to be able to outsource parts of the operations in order to be able to scale more effectively. And there are implications then on your internal staff as well, because, for example, if you're outsourcing, that also means that there's a need to be able to train some of your existing employees on how to manage those CROs more effectively. You want to be able to train your employees on new technologies. You want to be able to train them as project managers as well, because that will help make the process of drug discovery more transparent to the organization as a whole. And it makes it easier to plan the projects and execute them. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is how would things like automation impact your staffing needs? How many full-time employees are you going to need at each location and at each department? There are some organizations, for example, that are actually split geographically. F1 Therapeutics, I think, is an example of that. And certain operations happen in select time zones, and they basically follow the sun type of approach to getting new therapeutics out the door. In addition to this, you have to understand you may have contract and remote employees, and you need to be able to manage those employees more effectively. In terms of building your outsourcing portfolio, you need to understand the gaps that are in your laboratory capabilities that these CROs may be able to address. Also gaps in instrumentation or subject area expertise. There may be gaps in terms of software or staffing, and all of those kind of play a role in helping you scale your operations. Things to consider, looking at, basically CROs for all the stages of your pipeline. There are a variety of tools that you can use to help identify some of those CROs. Our farm to market platform actually has tools built into it to help you identify different types of CROs. In addition to that, the software and informatics implementations may require outsourcing help as well. And lastly, what we're starting to see is greater traction for project management support for outsourcing, but also project management support internal to the organization itself. We're seeing increased outsourced needs when it comes to compound synthesis, and companies are trying to address this either through FTE contracts with CROs or on a more fee-for-service basis. So we've talked about, the wealth of information that we need to pull together in order to better understand the business. And now that we've pulled that information together, how do we leverage that to make better decisions and better plans? So let's take a look at an example here. We talked earlier about factors that affect timeline and budget, and factors that affect the risks that are involved in this process. How does that how do those things affect our timelines and our budgets? So here, what we've done is we've pulled together information about the assays that were being run at Basecamp, and looking at a timeline to figure out how much money is actually being spent running these assays during each month over the next 7 months. And then here we can see assay costs by month, breaking this down further on an assay by assay basis so that you can see where things are becoming more expensive. So lastly, the one thing I wanted to mention here was that throughout this webinar, we've been talking about the roadmap services that we provide, and you've seen some of the benefits they can provide in helping you understand your business and your business more effectively, including understanding the people, process, and technologies involved in making your business a success. We've seen that the roadmap itself can help you improve planning and budgeting capabilities. We've also seen how providing that information in a concrete set of plans can help set expectations both internally and externally. As more of these collaborations come online, it's important to be able to set expectations with your third-party partners. Providing this kind of information to them is critical for success because it sets expectations on their part as well as your part. It's also critical when you're communicating this information internally to help drive your programs. For more information on our roadmap services, you can download the white paper on our Scaling Your Drug Discovery Pipeline, and you can get that from the expo right after the webinar. If you'd like to have a copy sent to you, please contact Tracy at the email shown below. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Mark. Tracy and I are joining you now. So yeah, that was a great discussion, and we do have a few questions that came in through the registration, but I just want to give everyone another chance at that $50 gift card. That'll buy you a quarter tank of gas these days. So, it's, I'm sure you're all clamoring for that. But yeah, just please ask your question in the chat and one of us will get to it. But I know, Mark, you discussed artificial intelligence, and I know it has an increasing role in drug discovery in general. But specifically for scaling a biotech, does it have a role?
It can. So one of the key areas in scaling a small molecule drug discovery program or scaling antibody drug discovery programs is you need to rapidly iterate on each successive generation of a compound. So one way you can do that is to apply artificial intelligence to suggest structural changes either to the small molecule itself or sequence-based changes to the antibody. Those suggestions can then be used to help drive subsequent programs forward. So I think that really helps accelerate things. But in addition to that, we've seen artificial intelligence and text mining being used to help lift information out of the papers where new discoveries on targets and their roles in specific indications are kept. to us, that's basically a rich mine that people have been slow to tap into. But we're gradually seeing more tools come on board and make it easier for people to identify new targets.
That's great. We actually have a question from Seth. How long has Aspen Biosciences been offering this specific service that you've been talking about today?
So, Seth, that's a good question. We recently packaged the service. Prior to this, people would just ask us for help in this, and we didn't really package or brand the service itself. It was just something that we did as part of a project. But over the past couple of years, we've realized that we needed to provide this in a more packaged solution. And so we've, over the course of the summer, we began to put things together into a more packaged format that are easier for customers to be able to take on board.
Thank you, Mark. And I know there are several case studies on our website that talk about the work that we've done. So you've talked about several new exciting modalities: RNA vaccines, antibodies, cell-based therapies, and protein degradation. What do you think is the most challenging of these new modalities to scale up?
That's a good question.
Well, that's a challenging question to answer without insulting a bunch of people. Because everybody is going to claim, oh, my modality is the most difficult to get approved. But from what we've seen, I would think that cell-based therapies and gene-based therapies have been traditionally the most difficult to get approved. If you take a look at Ionis, for example, it took them 16 years to get their antisense technology approved. So it is a very challenging modality to work in. There are others out there. Every time you try to pioneer something new, it's a challenge getting it through the FDA's approval process. And when we take a look at farm to market, it actually shows us what the breakdown is in the companies that are in each of these communities. And one of the things that we see is roughly 40% of the companies in each of the communities is working in a very exotic therapeutic class. So it can be something like induced natural killer cells, for example, from Fate Therapeutics. That's a very interesting area to get into. And it will undoubtedly create challenges for them in getting approval for those products. But it's the same thing for some of the other therapeutic classes that are out there. A lot of people are working in very innovative areas. And when we talk with VCs, like Flagship, for example, their focus has become more on these exotic therapeutic classes and less so on small molecule companies.
Wow. Okay. Thanks. And then related to that, so Bernie Greenspan was commenting about things getting lost in the email and there not being as big of a focus on project management and drug discovery. So can you touch on the biggest benefits of implementing project management in drug discovery?
Yeah, so number one, the biggest challenge that a lot of these companies face is setting expectations and communicating that to the rest of the organization, and then consistently following through on this. So traditionally, what we see in drug discovery and drug development organizations is that drug development organizations have a very sort of uniform process for getting something out the door. And this is driven by regulatory requirements. And so to help drive that process, they make use of project managers. And traditionally, we don't see as much of a role for project managers in the drug discovery end of the business. That's beginning to change. And that's changed, I guess, over the last 7 years or so, where we're seeing a greater emphasis on getting scientists who are heavily involved in the drug discovery process to put on a project manager hat and to pick up those project management skills in order to help drive those programs more effectively. It's, you know, Mary, I think one of the programs that you put on through the Biotech Networks, I'm guessing this is 8 or 9 years ago, was on project management for scientists. In that meeting, it was one of the most heavily attended meetings that you put on. And you had guests coming from UCSD to help set the stage and help people understand what's involved in project management.
Yeah, we recently looked at who attended that, and you're right. We had about 120 people sign up. And what was interesting to me, that was 8 years ago, and some of the people actually were from in academia at that time, and now they've gone on to do project management at a company. So that was pretty cool. And I do think there's more. It's more accepted now. I think people are a little bit shy on the chat, and they might want to talk to Mark specifically. So the way that we've got this set up, and I'll advance one more slide, is that the sessions are now available. And so you can head over, and we'll get over there just as soon as we can. You click on the sessions on the left, and you can either chat with Mark or myself in the sessions, or you can video. It's similar to a Zoom, and there's up to 7 people that can be on a Zoom. And also, Tracy Murray will be at the Aspen Biosciences Expo, and so that's also available on the left. And so you can chat with her, watch a video, or share your own video and ask her questions. And there are links for you to download our white paper that describes the steps for scaling up a biotech, as well as other info. And so thank you so much, Mark. Thanks to all who attended. And we'll hope if you're on the West Coast, you've got 15 minutes left in your lunch break. So I hope you'll come over and say hi, and let us know if you have any questions.
See you over there.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone. See you there soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.